Well, it's Black Friday and you'll notice I'm not shopping. You know, I'd go if they had something useful like, I don't know, polyester resin 99.9% off. But I don't think I'm going to stand in line and fight some guy over TV. But anyhow, the last couple of days I've actually got a little bit of work done on our big giant cardboard boat project here. So I thought I'd give you guys an update. No more tattoos from the hot glue gun, by the way. It's starting to take a little bit of shape here in the corner. This has been a little bit tougher than what I thought, and once I got to thinking about it, I realized why. We've got a radius down here that is 34 inches, and that radius, what it does is it defines this point right here. You see it? So that's constant height and point relative to the deck all the way around. So that's one radius. The second radius is this one up here, which is a 36-inch radius. And that's basically derived off how I laid out the seating and kind of the curved banquette up here. Both these have different center points. So what that means is this one, the upper one, starts curving at this point here and wraps around. However, if you go straight down, this one here doesn't actually start curving until you get right here. So, if you guys can see, this from here to here is actually straight when the upper one's curving. So after pondering it for a while, I've figured out the way to approach this is I made this little girt right here, this rib. And what this rib is, if you project this line straight out and another line straight out 34 inches, that's where the center point forms. So from here around to here is 90 degrees. So I built this rib, and I knew that this point here was 2 inches over from the deck and 2 inches up from the deck. So I measured this length over to, you probably can't see it in there, the curved wall piece that I made, and then measured the height, measured the length from the curved wall piece out to here, found this point, cut that piece out. Then once I did that, these pieces in between, what I did was I measured this curve up here along the curve. I used a 100-foot tape measure for this and divided that into 3 equal lengths. Then I did the same thing down here, although I could use a straight tape measure since this is a straight segment. This looks a little bit curved. I got one of these ribs too tall, this one here. Anyhow, I divided that up and repeated the process and made these ribs here. You'll notice these little pieces in here, the only thing those were on there for was to stiffen this rib up, because the cardboard has a tendency to try to curve. I think it's from different moisture content in the different faces or whatever, but anyhow, that was basically to hold it straight until I started gluing the planking on. So that solved that part, and then I got back to, well, how do I handle the 90-degree section of this bottom radius? And this would have been easier if I'd thought through it and laid everything out on this piece of cardboard down here. However, I kind of did this by the seat of my pants, so I didn't. This rib right here is actually 45 degrees from this rib over here. I put this piece of tape here for reference. There's so many ribs here, it gets kind of confusing. But it's 45 degrees over to here, and from here over to here is another 45 degrees. So we've got 90-degree angle, but I didn't know, I couldn't physically get to my center point to lay this line out because I glued this curved wall piece in place. So what I did was I measured from the corner a certain distance on both sides, and it doesn't matter what that distance is. I projected those lines out at 90-degree angles, and wherever they intersect, that's a point along this line that goes from the corner to the center, because it's a 45-degree angle. So I found that point, made this rib. Again, this curved piece here is the point where the two planes, the one that's sloping outward and the one that slopes inward, come together. If this was the actual boat, you wouldn't see this vertical surface. There would be actually, at this point here, there would actually be a plane that slopes back, this plane here. So, but anyhow, without cutting the plywood off, I couldn't do that in the mock-up. But I got this rib established, and then basically I repeated the process for the ribs in between, just like I did these other ribs down here. I measured the circumference, divided it into 3 parts, did the same thing down here. These are obviously wider spacing down here in the bottom, and then cut these pieces. And then once I had that, I've got kind of my framework. And I think GT1 Million, I think you had mentioned doing like a basket weave sort of deal. And this is real similar, I think, to what you're talking about. I think your basket weave, you actually have the strips that kind of go, you'd have one that goes underneath this and then pokes up and then goes over another rib. And I never have actually done that. I've done this a lot in architecture school. You would not believe how many zillion hours I have building stuff like this. But at any rate, I started down here at the bottom and I put this plank on. And because of this compound curve, you'll notice that once I got to this point here, which is the last of the straight segments, I actually had to start cutting the bottom of this off. And that's because of the two radiuses in the compound curve. And I wasn't 100% sure how this was going to work out, so what I did was I kind of skip planked it. I put this plank on, then I put another one on, and I put this one on, I put this one on, this one, and this one. And I tried to leave 2 inches in between them, and that's what these planks are, is 2 inches wide. And I did a real good job along here, but as you can see, once I got down here, I let the gap widen a little bit on me, a little bit more so right here. I might have to cut this at a wedge shape to fill it in, but that's kind of where we're at, and I need to fill in the rest of these wedges and actually start some more planking come this way. The reason, I wish these planks were longer, but I wanted the rib of the cardboard running this way. If you try to run it the other way, where I don't know if you guys can see the corrugations here, what happens is when you start bending it, instead of getting a nice smooth curve, all of a sudden one of these will collapse and you get like kind of a piece that's going up and then it starts angling back down. And so this just gives you a little bit smoother surface, and you know, we'll start to form something that looks a little bit closer to what the actual end product will look like. And you'd be amazed at how strong this is with all the hot glue. So that's kind of where we're at, and hopefully today I can get the rest of this corner formed. I'll step back and kind of see what it's starting to look like. Got so much stuff in here, everything's in the way, but you can kind of see right there is the bow. And you can kind of see as it starts to curve around. I think the shape's starting to get there. I still think the bow needs to have a steeper angle on it, so we may be doing this again. But anyhow, it's kind of an interesting shape, something different. Hope you guys have a great Black Friday.